So we're moving into the Tchaikovsky part of the opening ceremonies.
He was gay, right?
Totally gay.
And who's that dancer supposed to be?
He's Ivan the Terrible, also very gay.
Really? Ivan the Terrible?
Yes, his Russian name is really more like Ivan, who was really terrible about borrowing your Betty Buckley albums and not returning them.
Wow, that is gay. Tell us about the choreography.
It's based on the work of Diaghilev, Russia's greatest choreographer, who was also gay. So were Nijinsky and Nureyev.
You know, this little bit here looks a lot more like Gene Kelly.
Yes, well, Putin adores Gene Kelly. He loves to have some guys come over and watch the old movies.
So you know Putin?
Well, I don't know him, but my ex-boyfriend Brandon knows his Zumba teacher.
Okay, and what are those dancers doing right now?
They're shepherds, and they're pretending to play imaginary flutes.
Are you sure about that?
90% sure.
How much longer does the ceremony go for?
Well, the last hour is all Lady Gaga. And then we have fireworks, celebrating Russia's new anti-gay propaganda law.
So there's a campaign against gay propaganda.
Yes, it's called It Doesn't Get Better, which in Russia is kind of true.
But this whole ceremony is
totally not gay. Here's the thinking. If nobody gets arrested for this, how can anybody ever get arrested for gay propaganda?
Here's hoping it works. Is that Putin coming out onto the field?
Yes, this is the part where he sings Sondheim's Being Alive.
While that's happening, welcome to the Scramble. Today on the show, the LGBT consequences of Sochi, the heated arguments you're having about Woody Allen, and a huge barrier falls at the Westminster Dog Show. And now he's totally exhausted from G.I. Joe's 50th birthday party in Chelsea. Colin McEnroe.
It was over the weekend. G.I. Joe turned 50, and a whole bunch of us all just showed up to celebrate that with him. All guys, too, interestingly. We are going to talk about LGBT rights not only in Russia, but as you'll see, there are profound international implications, serious profound international implications for what's going on there and what will go on after the games leave. And so to better explain that, our first guest, I guess I should sort of say as we go along here a little bit later, we will be talking to Dahlia Lithwick. She writes about courts and law for Slate.com. She's recently been writing about the so-called court of public opinion in the case of Woody Allen, Mia Farrow, Dylan Farrow, et al. And then towards the end of the show, we will talk to Tina Sussman. She's the New York national correspondent for the LA Times. She's at the Westminster Dog Show right now. There is some big news there. So our super guest today, as we call him, is Dr. Jay Michelson. He's director of the LGBT Global Rights Initiative at the Democracy Council and a fellow at Political Research Associates, which is a think tank, and the author of, most recently, I think, God versus Gay, The Religious Case for Equality. He joins us now. Welcome back to the show. This is your second appearance, I believe.
It is. Great to be back.
So let's talk about what's going on in Russia. I think most people have sort of some idea anyway that there is this anti-gay propaganda law. The law itself, considers almost any affirmative statement by or about a gay person to constitute propaganda. But it's bigger than that, as you've made clear in your writings. Explain, first of all, explain what's happening now. It's not just this one law, right?
No, it's really, this law is part of an overall crackdown both on LGBT people and on civil society more broadly. In the last couple of years, as Putin has kind of centralized power, there have been a number of measures against civil society organizations, NGOs, human rights organizations. In a way, the LGBT community is kind of the canary in the coal mine. It's part of a much broader crackdown that's really deeply troubling.
And it's also deeply troubling in the sense that just sort of staying with the canary, staying with the LGBT issue, that it's not going to be confined to Russia. It's not even confined to Russia yet, as things stand. Explain about that. Explain how this kind of thing is cropping up in some of Russia's neighbors and elsewhere.
Absolutely. I think the short takeaway is we ain't seen nothing yet. With the eyes of the world on Russia for the Olympics, things have been a little bit quiet comparatively. There have still been arrests. Just last week, there was an arrest of an acquaintance of mine, actually, another activist in St. Petersburg. But I think everybody who watches Russia agrees that it's about to get a whole lot worse. So there's two major areas where that's happening. First, in Russia, there's already been proposed, and it was shelved because of the Olympic attention, there's been proposed a law that would strip children from LGBT families even if it's, let's say, a lesbian couple and the child is a biological child of one of the women in the couple, this proposed law, would take children away from their own families, which is obviously horrifying. And then the second piece, outside of Russia, there's kind of a domino effect that's already taking place. So the Ukraine, which has just moved closer to Russia, is likely to adopt a similar anti-propaganda law. There are countries around the world that Russia's trying to lead in a kind of traditional values bloc. Traditional values here including prejudice, discrimination, and bigotry. And it's really, Russia is active on the world stage in the United Nations and elsewhere, and we really have only seen the tip of the iceberg.
So, yeah, I just want to sort of flesh that out a little bit. One thing that you're arguing is that Putin, as he brings Russia back, I mean, Russia's influence in the world, I think it's fair to say, had been waning, had been dwindling economically. It was on its knees not many years ago. And as Putin tries to make it more ascendant in various ways, one of the ways that he's doing that is, as you're suggesting, creating this traditional values bloc that's not just Russia and Moldova and Georgia, and it's not just places like that, but maybe even reaching out to some of the African countries where, in fact, values are similarly conservative, similarly restrictive towards alternative lifestyles and orientations, right?
That's absolutely true. I think, it's tempting to look at what goes on in Russia as well as in countries in Africa and just say, oh, this is homophobia, isn't that bad? Really, this is politics. This is international geopolitics, exactly as you said. This is Russia maneuvering on the world stage and deciding to depict anything that's pro-LGBT as Western, right? So if we're going to stand up to the United States, that means we have to stand up against gay rights. If we're going to resist, if this in the African context, Western colonialism, we have to resist the advance of gay rights. And not only is this historically ridiculous, as your intro suggested, right, Tchaikovsky, Diaghilev, and also there are numerous examples of sexual diversity in Africa. It's historically ridiculous, and it's incredibly damaging, and people are dying. It's truly, because of this geopolitical maneuvering, it's a truly atrocious situation for folks all over the world.
And that raises the question of how much anybody in any of those places is inclined to listen to the outside world. To whatever degree with the outside world, we're really talking about the West. One of the things that you've made clear in your writings is they're setting up that dichotomy, right? They're saying if you've got issues with the West, you've got issues with LGBT people. If you love the West, then maybe you love this other stuff. They've kind of tried to set it up that way. But I guess what I'm wondering is, I mean, you cite Armenia as a place that backed off a little bit from some of these restrictions, maybe because, in fact, it didn't play that well with Western allies or maybe even Armenians who've emigrated to the West.
Right. I mean, I think a lot of times here in the United States, we kind of throw up our hands and, what can we do about a situation halfway around the world? But Armenia, it's not well known. It's not the largest country in the world, but it's an example of success. There was immense pressure from the European Union not to pursue a law similar to Russia's. And because Armenia's relationship to Europe is different from Russia's and the Ukraine's and Moldova's, they actually shelved the law. So international pressure, people at home caring about this, paying attention during the Olympics and other times, it does actually make a real difference. It just depends on which party is in power. And it's really sobering to think that the basic rights of human beings are being used as a pawn in this way. When Ukraine was kind of wiggling back and forth between Russia and Europe, one of many kind of items on the table was the anti-gay, the anti-propaganda law that they were considering. When the EU, they were considering, getting closer to Europe, the EU said you can't discriminate against a percentage of your population and be part of this expanded trade zone. But now, as the Ukraine slid toward Russia, it's sliding toward passing its own version of the law. So we're really kind of pawns on this political chessboard. But meanwhile, people's lives are actually at stake and people's families.
And it makes you wonder what we're heading towards, what, in fact, the map will look like, not the physical geographical map, but sort of the map of loyalties and ideals will look like 5 or 10 years from now. I mean, if things progress in the way that you've suggested, we really might wind up with the European Union, the U.S., and some other kindred spirits on one side, and then this very peculiar coalition of states in Eastern Europe and maybe some African states and maybe states elsewhere that have joined together in kind of a collective rejection of U.S. values. I mean, maybe comparable. I mean, not once again geographically identical, but maybe comparable in some ways to what we grew up with during the Cold War, when there was one side and another side.
I think it's a very uncertain picture. The reality, and I think the one aspect that may complicate the situation you've just depicted, is that gay people exist. Mm-hmm. And I think as stories become better known, as people feel more confident to share their stories, their lives, that actually shifts the calculus. You know, you can't sort of keep saying homosexuality is Western or non-Russian when, you know, there are people in your own country who are coming forward and sharing their own stories and their own lives. So I think that's one possible difference. But look, we've seen it in terms of women's rights and access to reproductive health care. Here again, you know, all of it to be pro-women is to be pro-Western. So there is a danger of this turning into another aspect of human rights seen as not for us, as that's something other people do, and that's the real danger here.
All right, so let's sort of venture a little bit closer to home. There are a couple of interesting things happened over the weekend. One of them was that Eric Holder, our Attorney General, announced some adjustments in the Justice Department policies, adjustments that would basically bring the Justice Department a little bit closer to the legal language in the Windsor case. Even though the Windsor case was decided affirmatively in favor of gay marriage, it doesn't solve every single problem. So Holder's talking about basically changing U.S. Justice Department policies so they track more closely with the ideas in Windsor. How important is this to you?
So this is one of those victories that's very important on a sort of practical level, but I don't think it has the symbolic value of same-sex marriage. Currently gay people live in a sort of weird legal limbo. So I'm married to my partner in the state of New York, and the federal government now recognizes that marriage. But if we go to my home state of Florida, where I grew up, all of a sudden it's like the marriage doesn't exist. And fortunately, my partner and my family have a good relationship, but many gay people who are estranged from their families find themselves in hospitalization situations and in other contexts where their family, who had rejected them, suddenly has power over their lives. So this ruling kind of evens the turf out a little bit in a kind of bureaucratic way. That again, it's not something that people march for in pride parades, but in the lived reality of LGBT people's lives, this is a really significant step forward. I think the dominoes are really falling, and they're falling quicker than I actually would have anticipated, having done this work for the last 12 years. And I think we're really moving to a place where it just, once we see gay people as people, and we see that love is love, and this is not a lifestyle, it's not a choice, it's not anything other than what it is, which is just a slightly different way of loving, people's minds and hearts are opening really quickly.
Yeah, I think one of the things that makes this one a difficult thing to talk about is that in a lot of the ways it'll manifest itself, not all of the ways that it'll manifest itself, but a lot of those ways have to do with our own interactions with the Justice Department. And usually when you're interacting with the Justice Department, something's gone wrong in your life anyway. So
right.
It's kind of like, oh boy, we don't have to testify against each other in court anymore if we're a married couple. Well, who's really looking forward to that, or the bankruptcy ramifications, or the prison visitation ramifications? It's hard to hold a celebration for that, because for the most part, you're really kind of hoping you never have to access that particular set of latent rights.
No, that's right. I mean, look, but these things really do matter. There's an organization called Immigration Equality, which works on the intersection of LGBT and immigration. And literally, people who were duly married in the state of New York, one of the partners was undocumented. This as an actual case, was then put in a detention facility in New Jersey because of being undocumented. And their partner, their legal husband, couldn't visit them, basically, because it was New Jersey wouldn't recognize their marriage from New York. And this obviously it also led, because at that time there hadn't been federal recognition of the marriage, this individual was in danger of deportation because the federal government didn't recognize their marriage. And, these kinds of day-to-day details, this is a little bit of filling in the blanks, but it's night and day. And it's amazing, just friends of mine, people who have been together for 20, 30 years, and who are suddenly getting married because, that really does make a difference, not just symbolically, but practically as well.
We're talking to Dr. Jay Michelson, his most recent book, God versus Gay, The Religious Case for Equality. So last topic here, we were talking about dominoes falling and change happening faster than you had ever expected it to happen. One place where change doesn't happen maybe quite as fast, but an area of life that's really, really important to a lot of Americans is the NFL. The NFL is this incredibly popular institution, but if you go inside locker rooms, it's the 1950s. So one of the things that has greeted us over the last 24 hours is the news that this young man who currently attends Missouri, he's a star defensive end. His name is Michael Sam. He's a draft prospect. It's not an ironclad certainty that he'll wind up in the NFL, but he's a draft prospect, and he's decided to make it clear in the months that run up to the draft, in which every aspect of a person's background is endlessly scrutinized, particularly now that the draft itself has turned into this insane fly-specking media circus, probably understanding that this would come out anyway. He's decided to declare early on that he's gay. He's come out. Once again, is this something that you would expect to make a difference somewhere down the line?
Well, I think, you hit the nail on the head earlier. It's like you go in, and not just into the locker room, but into the NFL as an organization, and it's like you've entered a time machine, and now it's suddenly the 1950s. I think the ambivalent reaction that the NFL had to the Miami Dolphins bullying issues, the fact that there are a number of closeted players who, it's kind of an open secret within the gay community, but there are players who are not out in the NFL, and they would come out like to Chris Cluey, who's straight but who is an outspoken proponent of same-sex marriage. He would get these messages from closeted gay players and feeling really unsafe. So I think, look, we're still waiting for the first major athlete to actually play, right? So, Jason Collins came out, but it didn't really go so well for him, probably more because of his basketball skills and his sexuality. But I think if Michael Sam makes the team, makes the draft and becomes the first out NFL player, that is an important barrier. And, I think for myself, a football player locker room would be about the last place that I would ever feel safe, certainly based on my memories from high school. But things are changing there, too. There is a great organization called Athlete Ally promoting LGBT people in athletics, another one called You Can Play with a similar mission. And, it's not my own football locker room, let alone my father's football locker room out there anymore. And I think hopefully this could be a step that the NFL could kind of grow up, get over itself. Football locker rooms are really homoerotic places, but that doesn't mean you can't have gay people in them. And I think hopefully this barrier will fall.
Yeah, actually, the You Can Play program is significant here because, in fact, there was a workshop from that program that Michael Sam attended at Missouri, from which he came back and said, he just attended it the way all the players attend it, and he came back and he said to his coach in a very, loaded way, he said, Coach, I can play. I think that's how his coach first realized who Michael Sam was. It really is unfortunate that we don't have, as you say, the perfect case. Jason Collins at the end of his career, never really a dominating NBA player. This guy, unfortunately, Michael Sam, he's going to be he would be a project if he weren't gay. He would be a project for some team. He's really not the perfect guy to test this with. He's not a lock to make a team. He's kind of the wrong size. He's going to have to play out of position no matter where he goes. It really would be great if it was sort of some bone-crushing, Heisman Trophy. To whatever extent you think the NFL is a worthy proving ground for any moral or ethical issue, which I'm starting to seriously question, even as a football fan.
Yeah, it's an important thing. Look, the NFL, as you just said, is going through its own questioning and transition right now. But I think let's not underestimate, what the importance of these kinds of institutions for what we activists call the movable middle, whether it's the soccer moms or the Panera moms or whoever the swing voters are in any particular election. This is an important step in recognizing that gay people are people. They're in your community already. They may just not be courageous enough to come out and be honest yet. And I think it's a really significant barrier to fall if it does fall. But you're right, we're waiting for the perfect poster child, somebody who's really at the top of their game and who comes out while still being an active player. And I think that's just a matter of time. And I think in my work I come in contact. I'm involved with the Russia issue a lot, and was actually at an event just last night where I'm in Los Angeles with Greg Louganis, who was reflecting. When he came out 20 years ago. It was shocking. It was news. There were people who his other athletes, Olympic athletes, wouldn't share a hotel room with him, and he was also HIV positive. And there was all this panic about what happens in the pool. And if you just reflect where we've come in 20 years, we have really moved forward. And I think when that star player does come out, which I hope will be soon, I'm not usually an optimistic guy, but I think we're going to do the right thing.
All right, sounds great, Dr. Jay Michelson. Always great to talk to you. Thanks for joining us today.
It's a pleasure.
All right. We're going to be moving along here. We're going to, in the next segment, talk to Dahlia Lithwick. She writes about legal affairs and the courts for Slate.com. But what she's been writing about this weekend, one of the things she's been writing about, has been the Woody Allen case, a case from 1992 here in Connecticut. But it's back.
The Russians are trading their gaze. Come on, listen, Vladimir, Mr. President. Your new laws are good, only to be put in the garbage can. Ha. Come on, sing along if you feel like loving me something good.
So last Monday, we find ourselves talking to David Edelstein and Melanie Kantaya about the Woody Allen case. And I sort of thought, well, that'll be the one conversation we have about this. This, as most of you know, is a case that arises from 1992, here in Connecticut, actually, where Woody Allen and Mia Farrow were going through an acrimonious breakup, a lot of charges and countercharges. And obviously the breakup was occasioned by Woody Allen's sudden new romantic interest in Mia Farrow's adopted daughter. And on top of that, there came all these sexual abuse, or a set of sexual abuse allegations regarding a younger child, a 7-year-old Dylan Farrow. So anyway, I'm not going to recap the whole thing for you because it would take forever. But what has surprised me over the last week, and one of the reasons we're having Dahlia Lithwick on right now, is the way the conversation about this has kept going. It's kept going in the media, and it just kept going among regular people too, on digital media and elsewhere. People are having arguments. So Dahlia Lithwick's joining us. She's written about the fact that you can't try the Woody Allen case in the court of public opinion. But Dahlia, first of all, welcome back to our airwaves.
Thank you for having me.
And let's maybe acknowledge a little bit more what I was saying before, that what gives rise partly to the article that you're writing is just the way this conversation, this unexpected conversation, I don't think we thought we were going to be talking about this case again in 2014, but for some reason, people are heavily re-engaged on this whole subject of what Woody Allen either did or did not do, right?
Well, the immediate trigger, the time trigger is, he was hugely honored at the Golden Globes. He got a Lifetime Award, and, as you may recall, Ronan, Mia Farrow's son, possibly with Woody Allen, possibly with Frank Sinatra, but, started tweeting immediately that he shouldn't be honored. Mia Farrow started tweeting, and then, it was already starting to ramp up around the Golden Globes. And then I think when Nick Kristof last week published Dylan Farrow's letter, I think it was in response to, upcoming Oscar awards that Woody Allen may get. And so I think it's, believe it or not, tied to movie award season. Mm-hmm. And the idea has become, how can we honor and celebrate someone who, let's remember America says his family may have been a pedophile.
So this case is probably never going to be tried in the courts. Instead, it's being tried, as you say, through a widespread litigation by hashtag, all dressed up in legal language and presumptions, but it's not getting us any closer to justice. When you say litigation by hashtag, what are you talking about?
Well, I think we're really in a Twitter war and an op-ed war. Even since I wrote that piece, there's been, first, there was a Dylan Farrow piece in the Times, then her adopted brother Moses weighed in with a piece, and then this weekend Woody Allen had a piece in the Times. So we are doing a sort of proxy trial 22 years later, but we're doing it in the op-ed pages, and those op-ed pages, as you said, spawn huge conversations, not just in other op-eds and on the blogs and on the radio and on television. Piers Morgan has been doing sort of a proxy trials on his TV show, but, on Twitter. And one of the things that was starting to worry me as I was watching this was the extent to which people were not just proclaiming, I know my opinion of Woody Allen, but they were proclaiming what they thought to be legal truths. Clearly the guy is a pedophile, and clearly, the legal system failed. And so, I think one of the things that makes me nervous is, in the absence of a satisfactory legal conclusion, or really any legal conclusion, because in 1992 they simply decided not to go forward with the case, we've all taken it upon ourselves to try him and find him guilty in the media, using little shards of evidence and bits of things that we know. I think just conflating a legal process with a sort of journalistic and opinion process, and I think it's just kind of a little bit dangerous when we want to do this kind of trial by mob and opinion.
I have to say, I have been astonished, even in people who are basically making a fair amount of sense as they're writing about it. They will say things, even in the course of writing a fairly even-tempered piece or making sense. They'll say something like, I believe that Woody Allen did this. However, were I sitting on a jury hearing the case, I probably wouldn't be able to return a guilty verdict. And I'm thinking, well, that's a very judicious-sounding thing to say, but going the Dahlia Lithwick route on this, you have no idea what kind of verdict you would return. A legal case is a very complicated thing, which you have to sit there and hear as a jury, right?
That's right, and not only that, but I love what you're saying, because I think it highlights one of the things that made me very nervous. Is this started to get framed as a sort of victims' rights conversation? That here was this 7-year-old child who's allegedly molested, and the failure to believe that she was molested, the failure to take her word, is not only a failure of the judicial system, but it's sort of a failure of morality on all of our parts. So, I was reacting to an awful lot of pieces, sort of like describing what you're describing, saying, even though there was no conclusive finding, if you don't condemn Woody Allen as, a child molester, you are shaming and silencing all victims of all sexual violence. And to me, that kind of absolute moral framing, to say you'd better take a position on something you don't actually know, because the failure to take a position is taking a position that will harm children, just strikes me as so reductive and so it's almost kind of a bullying posture. And so a lot of people who over the course of this discussion have said what you're saying and what I'm saying, which is, we've seen tiny, tiny fractions of evidence. We don't have enough to form a judgment, certainly not beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the legal standard. Even saying I don't know what happened is now seen as a moral failure.
The other thing that has struck me just in a kind of sociological way is the degree to which these conversations, whether they're going on in the media or just going on in digital media, just conversations among regular people who aren't members of the press, a characteristic of them is that they often involve people who are like-minded on 80 to 90% of most possible subject matters. And it's not, and I think it makes the debates a little bit more intense, because usually, if you're sort of, if you're a Michael Kinsley fan, you don't really care that much about what Greg Gutfeld and his fans have to say, or pick somebody else, Glenn Beck or somebody like that. But you do care a lot about what people whom you respect and whose opinions you often enjoy have to say. And suddenly these people are finding themselves on opposite sides of a pretty heated debate that matters a lot to them. But you wouldn't necessarily be able to know, based on somebody's magazine subscriptions or voting record, whether they're going to side with Woody Allen or with Dylan Farrow on this.
Well, I'm finding that one of the things that's very interesting, that I'm seeing sort of leaching into this conversation, and particularly as it plays out in Twitter and social media, is that people tend to stake out political or policy positions often based on their own experiences. Mm-hmm. So, I cannot tell you how many people, and I've had a lot of angry mail this week, say if you had been molested as a child, you would know that she was telling the truth. Or alternatively, because people are angry at me on both sides for not taking a position, you have no idea how many, lying women come forward with false accusations to destroy prominent men. So these kind of memes of this is what all women do or all children tell the truth really, really start to shape the discussion. And in fact, because I think we don't know all that much factually about what happened, and we can't know, and as you say, we won't know, the statute of limitations has run, a kind of what rushes in to fill that void is our own experience, our own truths. And, I'm remembering covering the Duke lacrosse case, years ago when it was another situation of, sexual misconduct, a lot of unclarity about what actually happened. And long before, there were even indictments in the case, people had made their minds up based on, as you say, their political views, their sense of, is the justice system working? No, it isn't working because it only privileges white men, or no, it isn't working because it always privileges, the woman accuser. But I think those things take so much space in this debate that you find yourself kind of debating your experience against someone else's experience, which is not a legal conversation. It's not even really a conversation.
It's also, as you've been suggesting here, one of those instances in which one's own agnosticism is not a defense or not enough to keep you out of trouble. If you say, look, I am absolutely incapable of deciding about this one way or another, every time I pick up one person's letter to the press and public as opposed to another person's, I'm a little bit more persuaded by the last thing that I read, whatever it was. If you say anything like that, you'll satisfy a certain number of people and stay out of a certain number of arguments. But as you're suggesting, agnosticism is not a vaccination against people's anger in this case.
No, and I think really that comes from just a general sense, and this is such a sort of tricky problem for the legal system. The legal system just doesn't do very well with these sexual violence cases. Steubenville, Duke, Kobe Bryant. Each and every one of these cases, I think we keep hoping that one of these cases is going to become sort of the ultimate statement on this is what happens, and vindicate either the rights of all the falsely accused or vindicate all the rights of all of the innocent accusers. And these cases almost never do that. They never afford us a kind of collective, cathartic, we've solved the problem. And I think that's because these tend to be very, very complicated. He says, she says litigation. They tend to be skewed by one's own vision, but also I think that the resolutions tend to be very narrow and very small, and you just don't ever get what I've sort of started thinking of as the Brown v. Board of sexual assault, the case that makes everything clear and morally very black and white. And so I think each of these cases is then seen as a kind of failure of the legal system, and all of that frustration is now packed into the conversation we're having about Woody Allen.
Talking to Dahlia Lithwick right now, just one last thought that I'd bring up is that, as you suggest, the statute of limitations suggests that the whole clamor you're hearing right now isn't going to have any real legal ramifications. But it's not always the case that these bright lines stay drawn between what goes on in the public conversation and what goes on in the court system, specifically or particularly as regards what prosecutors decide to do on cases they decide to go forward with. And here in Connecticut, I feel like we have a tremendous example of this in the sense that the very old Moxley murder was revived, I think, largely because Mark Furman and Dominic Dunn got very interested in it, began pressing it, began reviving it. So two people who had no particular role within the legal system or anything like that woke an old case up. And caused a full-grown adult to be tried as an adult for a crime which he either did or did not commit while a juvenile. And, I mean, it's an example, anyway, of the way a clamor like this one, a furor like this one, in the absence of protections like statutes of limitations, can really actually change the way things happen in courthouses.
I think that's true, although my understanding from what I've heard, the prosecutor in this case, the one who ultimately declined to bring a case against Allen, I think that the statute of limitations
I think it is.
Has run, but I think that what we're seeing now is a version of what you're describing, where if we can't try him in a court, we'll try him in the media, and moreover, if we can't punish him judicially, let's punish him socially and culturally. And so I think you're quite right that this is an effort to create a new kind of litigation and to have real consequences for him, in his wallet and in his, how we remember him, how history thinks of him, because we can't do it in the courts.
All right, Dahlia Lithwick, great to hear your voice again.
Thank you for having me back.
All right, bye-bye. And we're going to take a little break right now. We'll come back, and on a somewhat lighter note, I hope it'll be a lighter note, we'll talk about the Westminster Dog Show.
Our final segment is about the Westminster Dog Show, and I've been asked to announce that there will not be any jokes about the Nova Scotia duck-tolling retriever. Quiet. In the past, we have made jokes about the Nova Scotia duck-tolling retriever. Quiet. Owners of Nova Scotia duck-tolling retrievers have told us that this is offensive to them, and we apologize. Quiet. There's certainly nothing inherently funny about the name Nova Scotia duck. Sorry. I swear I was thinking about something else. Today's show was produced by Betsy Kaplan and me. Our interns are Skylar Magnoli and Andrew, the prospective intern. Greg Hill appeared in our introduction and tweets for us at WNPR Colin. Katie Tolarski is the executive producer. The part of Bill Curry was played by a Nova Scotia duck. Sorry. For articles, show pages, and photos of the Faith Middleton Show staff participating in a canine agility contest, visit WNPR.org. Tomorrow, our rescheduled Better Than Ever Pickling Show. And now, back to Colin.
I've seen those photos, and they're very exciting. The Faith Middleton Show staff going up and down ladders and going around obstacles and stuff. All right, so yes, we are the station. We are the NPR show that probably covers the Westminster Dog Show with greater alacrity and more enthusiasm than just about anybody else from year to year. Although we occasionally have said unfortunate things about the Nova Scotia duck-tolling retriever, which we will not be doing today. Instead, we're going to Tina Sussman. She's the New York national correspondent for the LA Times. She's right there right now, right? You're actually at the Westminster Kennel Club show, are you not? Well, of course, she might not even be right there at all. All right, let's see if we can reestablish contact with Tina. And actually, I'm going to put her on hold here. And I've got some things that I need to talk to you about anyway. So hold on just a second while I do that on hold. Here we go. I'm doing it right-handed. All right, so a couple of things that you need to know. Tonight, Kyone Wolfe is at the Mark Twain House for a conversation about the arts in Hartford. So she and some other arts leaders in Hartford will be there. It's actually a part of the Hartford Current Key Issue series. 7:30, is that what time it is? 7:30? Oh, it was early. Okay, our hors d'oeuvres at 5:30, and who doesn't love hors d'oeuvres? And then a 6:15 conversation. So anyway, she will be hosting that, moderating that tonight. We also want to get you very interested in the line that we've set up for you to contribute to our Thursday show. Our Thursday show is basically sort of, we're going to be interviewing a couple of experts about this, including Daniel Jones, the guy who runs the Modern Love column in the New York Times. But we're going to be talking to some experts about love and about how people sort of either decide to believe in the possibility of love or to reject the possibility of love. But that's what we want from you. We want to hear a story about when you knew love was real or when you decided love was never going to be real. And we've set up a phone line for you. I don't know what it is, but it's on our website at WNPR.org. It would be so helpful if I actually knew what it was. All right, we're going to go back to the Westminster Dog Show, the Westminster Kennel Club Show. Joining us now, as I said, Tina Sussman. She's the New York national correspondent for the LA Times. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
So the big news over the weekend was that, to a certain degree, a barrier fell. And when the barrier fell, certain kinds of dogs could then try to jump over other kinds of barriers. So, and this all has to do with mixed-breed dogs. So mixed-breed dogs are not going to be judged at the regular Kennel Club show that's today and tomorrow. But they did get to do something over the weekend. Tell us about that.
Well, over the weekend, they introduced for the first time in more than 200 years at Westminster Kennel Club, they held the Agility Championship, and they permitted mixed-breed dogs, also known as the All-American breed. That's how Westminster calls them, and most of us call them mutts. They permitted them to take part in this competition. So it was pretty exciting because, Westminster is obviously the prestigious dog club, and maybe it has a bit of a snooty attitude, at least in some people's minds. But when it comes to agility, they said, look, it doesn't matter what you look like as long as you can jump over those bars.
Oh, of course, those of us who are mixed breed dog owners and lifelong owners of various mixed breed dogs, we feel as though it's really more that we gave ground and allowed our kinds of dogs to be at the Westminster Dog Club. We don't feel like they're doing us any actual favors here. But I also, as a mixed breed dog supremacist, assume that a mixed breed dog absolutely won every event that there was to win at this agility contest. How right or wrong am I?
Well, you're actually not too far wrong. And I got to say, right up until the final seconds of a very dramatic finish, I was fully expecting a mixed breed dog named Rue to take the overall trophy. Rue did end up winning the best of his particular size class. There are 5 different categories, and he won the best in, let me see, I want to make sure I get this right, 20-inch dogs, which are the second largest. He did not win the overall. He was bested by a border collie by the name of Kelso, but he came in very well, considering that Rue was a dog who was so rambunctious that he'd been in and out of shelters for much of his life because a lot of owners just felt he was a bit too much for the family to take. There was also a mixed breed dog named Panda who went home with a yellow ribbon. That was 4th place for her particular category. So, they really made a showing, and I think they proved, as their owners would tell you time and time again, that there's really something to be said for going into these shelters, et cetera, and picking up a rescue and taking it home and, making it not just your pet, but obviously a champion of agility.
So, as you had an opportunity to observe these owners,
yes.
And so these are owners of mixed breed dogs who are competing in this agility contest as part of the Westminster Kennel Club show. I would assume that they also are a breed apart from the kinds of owners that you're seeing on the Monday and Tuesday exhibition of the regular pure breed shows. And obviously, for people who would like to know more about what those people are like, they should rent the movie Best in Show if they haven't already seen it. But I'm assuming the owners of these mixed breed dogs, they probably come at this in a very different way.
They come at it in a very casual way compared to the owners that you see here at the Best of Show. In fact, I'm sitting here ringside, which explains the cheers and occasional barks you might be hearing in the background. They're very casual about it, and they also realize that, they all said to me the same thing. It's really more the handlers, the humans' job to make sure the dog does well in the ring when it comes to agility, because the dog is simply following the human's lead. And these humans, they have to make sure that they give the dog the right cues. They need to make sure that they kind of put on the blinker, so to speak, in time. So the dog knows whether it's going to zig left, zig right, which end of the tunnel it's going to go in, which jump it's going to take next. And you could see while watching, some of the dogs, if they went astray, you could almost see in advance it was going to happen because the owner perhaps missed a step or seemed to go a little bit too far to the left or right. Every single time, whether a dog did well or whether a dog flamed out early, the owners always said, "Oh, well, it was my mistake. I didn't give them enough advance notice of that particular obstacle."
I was surprised to hear you say, and to read in your coverage, that some of these dogs some of the mixed breed dogs actually came from shelters. I just obviously in the show dogs that you're seeing today and tomorrow, their lives have been planned out in a manner consistent with maybe a member of the House of Windsor or something. They're from birth, they've been shepherded, you should pardon the expression, through a whole series of trials and groomings and preparations for what they are today. But it sounds like some of these dogs, these mixed breed dogs in the agility contest, 2-3 years ago, were living a very different life, weren't even in the home they're in now?
Yeah, that was something I found fascinating. There's a dog named Icy whose owner had picked up Icy at a rest. She adopted her temporarily, she thought, back in Georgia when Icy turned up at a shelter, and she and Icy bonded, and they started practicing agility together, and Icy competed over the weekend. Icy did not go home with the ribbon, but most of the mixed breed dogs had were accidental pets. A lot of their owners use that term. They agreed to foster them for a while, and then they just bonded with them and enjoyed them so much. A lot of them also, the one woman I talked to with a mixed breed dog, a little dog named Sadie, she had taught her dog agility because she lives out in a rural area, and she wanted this dog to be able to run in the rural area, in the woods, off the leash, but also be able to respond to commands to return quickly so that the dog didn't get lost or run into problems. So a lot of these people have very specific reasons for focusing on agility. The difference is, they're not, they like having a different dog, as they put it. It's nice to have a dog that looks different. And they understand they can't be part of Best in Show because Best in Show is really essentially, it's a beauty contest in a lot of ways.
Right.
And mixed breeds, they all look different. So you can't compare a mixed breed, say, to a purebred golden retriever. It just wouldn't work.
So you don't hear any of the mixed breed owners screaming, "Where's her yellow bumblebee? Where's her rubber yellow bumblebee?" And I'm assuming also that none of them brought like a dryer or anything like that with them.
No, that's another big difference. Here at Best in Show, these dogs spend a lot more time on their hair than I do. I guarantee it. You've got the rollers, the hair dryers, the combs. I just watched the Old English sheepdogs compete, and in between every movement, they're fluffing them out with combs and such. The mixed breeds, they just look like any dog you see walking down the street, and if they step in the mud or if they got rained on before they got into the ring, well, that's really not a problem, as long as they can jump over those bars.
Just to switch over for a second, we're talking to Tina Sussman. She's the New York national correspondent for the LA Times. Just to jump over to a second to the beauty contest that you're talking about, the Monday and Tuesday Best in Show competition, the breeds competition. These things, they can make kind of a difference out there in the outside world, at least to the degree that last year a so-called Affenpinscher named Banana Joe won Best in Show and created a temporary Affenpinscher shortage. Everybody suddenly wanted one of these dogs. They're very rare. There's not enough of them. People couldn't meet the Affenpinscher needs. I don't know. Do you see? I know there's 3 new breeds, entirely new breeds, competing this year. Is there any buzz around any particular dog? Should I be buying stock in any particular obscure?
There is indeed buzz. There's buzz surrounding 2 particular dogs, one of which, and I just tweeted this, one of which just took its Best in Breed, which is a big step toward Best in Show. That is the Old English sheepdog named Swagger, who we wrote about last year because Swagger basically came out of nowhere and was first runner-up last year. A lot of people were thinking Swagger could take it last year. Now they're thinking Swagger could take it this year. The other competitor for Swagger, though, is a Portuguese water dog named Matisse, who has won a lot of big awards, and many people I've spoken to said those are the 2 dogs to watch. A lot of people are really excited about Matisse, and they say, wow, wouldn't this be amazing if Matisse, who happens to be the same breed, of course, as the first dog, Portuguese water dog, wouldn't it be great if Matisse won it? Other people have also noted, though, that one downside, of course, when a dog wins Best in Breed is suddenly everybody wants one of those dogs. They don't want to scoop up those dogs. So dogs do, their popularity tends to ebb and flow, and these shows have a huge impact on that.
All right, Tina Sussman, so great to talk to you today. Thanks for joining us. You're covering the heck out of the Westminster Kennel Club show and doing an admirable job. And
thank you so much.
We were lucky to get you. All right, very quickly, I have to tell you, I have to scroll up in order to find this phone number. Does it sound like there's like a mild aspect of chaos here? All right, so if you want to tell us one of your romantic love stories, either when you knew love was real or when you decided it wasn't, the number you would call, get a pencil, 860-580, I guess people don't use pencils anymore, type into your machine, 860-580-9677. That's 580-9677. That's all I have to say. Cue the music.
Faithful to you alone and some of those folks you date. I'm part German Shepherd, so I don't have an ounce of flab. I smile and lick your face a lot, 'cause part of me comes from a big black lab. But I'm also a brindle boxer, so you can't push me around. And I'll clean the kitchen floor for you, 'cause I'm part Basset Hound. Some claim needs for special breeds, I don't begrudge them that. But I'm just the companion that you need. Unless you happen to be a cat. They say that Heinz has 57. I don't know of what. But rescue me and you will see that I ain't just some mutt. You may think I'm a mutt, but I'm deservedly man's best friend. There are so many little loving things I do. I'll adore you without end. You can trust me to be sweet to you. I don't need papers to prove who's who. So call me a dog, say I act like a nut. But I'm anything but, I said I'm anything but, I said I'm anything but a mutt.
I'm Kyone Wolf at the Westminster Dog Show. Okay, come on, Beavis, let's show 'em what you got. Come on. Come on. Come on. I never should have tried to compete with a mixed breed of basset hound and leech.